Hello, welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews. It's Gaming Friday. I'm Gary.
And I'm Geoff.
And today we're taking a look back at Dark Sector, which came out on the 25th of March 2008, developed by Digital Extremes and published by D3. This game, you get to play as Hayden Tenno, voiced by Michael Rosenbaum, who you might recognize as Lex Luthor from Smallville, as a CIA agent trying to intercept a rogue agent called Robert Mesner. Your right arm ends up contracting a virus that allows you to grow a glaive, which you will then use as a weapon and use to solve puzzles.
Oh yeah.
This is a game that I played when it came out, and I'll just be upfront and say that I really did not like this game. I wasn't impressed with it at all. I probably didn't give it enough time to win me over before I'd already moved on to another game. I'm kind of curious to come and look back at this game now and realize that it was a bit of a disaster for Digital Extremes. Now, Digital Extremes was founded in 1993 by a guy called James Schmalz, who was developing games and writing games while he was at university, actually getting paid, releasing some of his games as shareware, and eventually formed Digital Extremes, and they worked in partnership in a collaboration with Epic Games. And it was both Epic and Digital Extremes which built the Unreal Engine together.
Right.
And Digital Extremes helped them make Unreal Tournament as well. So it was only after the two companies went their separate ways, obviously Epic would go on to make the Gears franchise, Digital Extremes wanted to make Dark Sector.
Yeah.
And they kept shopping this game around to different game studios who just went, yeah, that's very good, you're very talented, how about you make this game for us instead? Or how about you port this game onto PC for us, because we don't know how to do that, and we'll pay you. So we'll pay you to keep existing as a company.
Yeah.
And, Digital Extremes ended up working on the Darkness 2, Homefront. They worked on the multiplayer for BioShock 2.
Yeah.
They did a lot of porting. And all the while, different games companies were like, yeah, your Dark Sector's good, but we don't want it.
Yeah.
Which was, it was their baby. They'd been working on it for nearly 10 years at this point. And then it was D3 publisher who turned around and went, okay, you can make your Dark Sector game, but no one wants a sci-fi game, so take all the sci-fi out of it. That big spacesuit that the character's in, yeah, get rid of that. We don't like that. Your character looks too feminine, so put an eye patch on him, like Snake, Snake Plissken or Solid Snake. Gruff him up a little bit, and all these changes.
Yeah.
And so Digital Extremes were, they kept going, and they were like, look, we're gonna have to compromise now, boys. We are not going to exist as a company anymore.
Yeah, they need to keep the lights on.
So in order to keep the lights on, they took a deal with D3 Publishing, and they forced all these changes into the game and forced them to release Dark Sector, which is, and this Dark Sector in name only, because almost everything that what they had built and were showing at tech demos and the E3 releases, none of that is pretty much in the game. None of it. They had to rebuild something that felt a little bit more Resident Evil, and a little bit more Gears of War to satiate the trend, And so the game that Dark Sector isn't anymore, but they had to keep the name because they sold the name as well.
Yeah, cool.
And so this game was a rush job, and it wasn't what they wanted, and it was only years later. I mean, this game kept Digital Extremes going. And of course,
just about,
there was a big market change where, because for smaller independent companies, there was no digital platform to put your games on. They finally did get to make their Dark Sector game, which everyone now knows as Warframe, and that is the spiritual successor or the original Dark Sector, just not being able to retain its name. And so I just think it's a great little story for James Schmalz, who started off by making some games that he got paid for and some freeware games, and then had to go through the entire games industry cycle to get to a point where they can self-publish and actually release the game that they wanted to make. instead of the game that the studio kind of was forced to make, which is Dark Sector.
Well, of course, the funny thing is that obviously the publisher's desire of the cut down vision in the end and ended up being a failure, and their original vision has ended up being a rip-roaring success. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, this game it wasn't critically hated or anything, or critically praised. It just existed on the market.
Yeah.
They didn't have a big push. I think I saw the logo and the character and the advertisement, and I was like, that could be interesting. Mm-hmm. But after spending a few hours with this game, I just found it visually lackluster. I wasn't that interested in this CIA agent.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't too interested in the locations that you went to either. Now, looking at the screen right now, what's the biggest issue you have with it? It's black and white and saturated. It's so unappealing to look at now.
I was going to say, this is flashback though, isn't it?
It is.
They grade this out because this is a sort of a...
It's either a flashback
setting.
or it's before you get the virus infection in your hand, which gives you the glaive.
Yeah.
But even then, it's still a very, gunmetal grey. It's repeated colours and textures, and it's just the locations. They don't tell a story either. They're barren of things that would help you piece this world together.
Yeah, I mean, well, at the moment you're just in some Russian compound, aren't you? Just trying to negotiate your way to this Russian bad guy.
It's very generic. It's very dull looking. It's not exactly exciting introduction to a game.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, all I'm doing is shooting bad guys at the moment. I don't know what the acting's going to be like once you get there. I've never played this game before, so
this is your first time with a controller.
This is all new to me. Obviously I'm a bit crap with controller because it's been a long time since I last used it.
Well, it's been said that this game has been poorly optimized in terms of being ported to PC, which you'd think would be a surprise coming from a games company that worked on porting games to PC. That their own game suffered some issues. I mean, even me trying to get this game to run today, the game crashed many times. It really didn't like me adjusting the resolution at all. It crashed the system, lagged out the system, caused the sound card to have issues. I was just like, geez.
I was going to say, right now, looks like a graphical glitch all along the bottom there. I'm pretty sure there's things missing off the side of the screen as well, so I think we've got a bit of an issue with
the resolution
with the way the resolution is matching up.
Yeah.
But I mean, it may be possible to fix all these things, but whether or not you would go to all that effort for what is now a dated style shooter, I mean, there are people who still think Gears of War is absolutely amazing, but to me, the whole action cover shooter is dated. It's not. It gets a little bit dull, just that format, whatever, really.
Because it becomes a bit like a duck hunt, where you're hiding behind a wall, the enemy's hiding behind a wall, you're popping your head up for a shot. And,
exactly, yeah, that's it. And look at the gun glitching through his... it's definitely rough around the edges, this. It's very DE style, that kind of like Unreal...
The reason why I wanted you to talk about and look at Dark Sector is because you are a massive Warframe fan.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to know if you could feel the similarities or see the extensions that would go into Warframe from this.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see the artist... has carried over into Warframe. The art style, like the basic fundamentals. This is obviously a lot lower polygon count. The storytelling style is perhaps a lot more basic. Although I say that very tentatively because I haven't seen any of the real cutscenes or anything coming along. I believe this is meant to get really gory, isn't it? I think this is...
It does get fairly gory. That was one of the things that attracted me to it. After playing games like The Darkness, I wanted to see monsters, and having weapons like the Glaive, which you can throw to decapitate enemies, to cut off their arms and legs.
It sounds good.
I believe, kind of Sniper Elite style, you can follow the Glaive around and cause the destruction yourself.
That's it,
with different upgrades, because it's not so much XP, but you earn points in order to upgrade your glaive and turn it into, or do additional things with.
Yeah. Yes, that is, the darkness is what this game perhaps most reminds me of, to be honest, in terms of the style. And what is funny about this is that there are obviously Hayden Tenno. There's lots of little references in Warframe to this original game. So the space ninjas,
right.
or rather the spoiler alert, the things that control the space ninjas, they are known as Tenno.
Right.
So the whole game is sort of an unofficial extension of what happens in this universe, extended forward as though that was the future, like thousands of years into the future after what happens in these events.
Yeah. Now, I think some Warframe fans have some have said that it's in the same universe, and some said that it's parallel universes. It's an alternate universe instead.
Whether or not, whichever one you go for, there's certainly lots of little references which would tie these two together, like the fact that the Tenno share his name, the infection that is in the in Warframe, and the Warframes themselves are kind of like biomechanical nanotechnology which completely transforms the body and shape and scale of enemies in Warframe, like what happens to Hayden Tenno with his arm. The glaive is in Warframe
as a
weapon. They still retain that mechanical idea of being able to take control of the projectile itself and control that around. There's a few Warframes that have that. The targeting reticles, you do the charged shot for the glaive. That's still exactly the same in Warframe. So, and then there are levels that you can play on the planets in Warframe, which are called Dark Sector levels. So there's Dark Sector Defense and there's Dark Sector Survival.
Yeah.
And they all it's a big helicopter, but I mean this is. I will say that one thing about D is they do seem to use a lot of Japanese style references. I mean, this could be Resident Evil right now.
Yes.
With its cheesy helicopter shooting through the windows scene. And there's a lot about Warframe that is very much taken from sort of Asian game styles, Asian game mechanics.
Do you think that's because, I mean, with Warframe and what they wanted with Dark Sector was obviously not what Gears of War was, which is the cover-based shooter, but for it to be more fluid.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more movement to it. Something akin to Vanquish, which was another game which was very Japanese in its style as well, where you're moving super fast and you've got thrusters on you so that when you're strafing, you're super strafing in and out of cover.
That's Warframe.
That is what Warframe is, and obviously this, taking him out of his his suit, making him this CIA agent, it kind of puts you back into that cover shooter mode.
That's it. Yeah, this is very American style Gears of War, with doff caps to Japanese style of sort of boss mechanics, I suppose. But but Warframe is much more like, I guess, their original vision.
Well, yes, yeah,
and it's definitely better for it, I would say, definitely.
So how are you finding the gameplay right now? How's the cover working? How's the gunplay working for you?
Well, just still trying to work out. Yeah, that's alright. I managed to drop my weapon there because the helicopter just disappeared. I am going to die because I couldn't work out how to drop my gun and shoot back for them. But back then, once I picked up the RPG, I worked it out eventually. Yeah. I mean, at the moment, this is definitely a game I would be pretty ambivalent about.
Right.
Because the action cover shooter is
it's run its course.
I got bored of it.
You can still do them if you do them very well, but otherwise it's just going to be you're just going to see it as a generic Gears of War clone. Because Gears of War, they're still making Gears of War games. They're not going to change the fact that it's a cover-based shooter.
Yeah, that's it. Like it is, it's Gears' key mechanic, isn't it? Whereas, I mean, I can tolerate the odd Gears of War every once in a while, but I wouldn't be
going from cover-based shooter game to game to game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's kind of cool. Really, DE's story is about the fact that they you know, the relationship with publishers and how they've broke free from publishers ruining their games essentially, and then they were able to make the games they really wanted by just taking the risk going for it.
Speaking of it, I mean, it's almost like this game is, you know, this needed to happen to them in order for them to get to Warframe, because if they'd gone and made Warframe before, you know, there was the online stores and everything else, back when this game came out, where, you know, DLC content was really just starting, you know, it was like, would they have been able to make Warframe as good as it is back then? And
I don't seem to be able to sprint. That's the only thing I'm saying.
I think you're used to the mad dashing of Warframe.
Absolutely.
You're now going at snail's pace.
There's got to be a way to sprint here.
But yeah, I think that the main reason for me, the year that this came out in 2008, was that it was almost a stellar year for games coming out.
Yeah.
You know, in 2008, Metal Gear Solid 4 came out, Fallout 3 came out, Ninja Gaiden 2, Left 4 Dead, Grand Theft Auto 4, Dead Space, Gears of War 2, and Red Alert 3, Burnout Paradise. They all came out in 2008.
Yeah.
You know, for me personally, that was a big year of games.
Yeah.
And so when I got this game in amongst all those, you could clearly see which was the weakest game out of the lot, and so it was just like, I had no time for this game.
Yeah, this is clearly like you know, this is we've got to make a game. This clearly isn't the original vision, you know. So as far as this game goes, I mean, it's okay. I certainly wouldn't say it was a bad game,
considering its 8-year development hell. You know,
exactly.
The fact that they got something released, which was enough to keep the lights on. It's. I'm glad that they're still around, even though I don't play their games. I was never a big fan of Unreal. You know? I didn't like this, and Warframe is just not my. It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
But you know, looking back at this game, you know, they at least they had giant monsters, decapitations, interesting weapons. I just felt that it looked ugly. You know, the sound effects weren't, you know, they were standard. Graphically, you know, it's a little bit unappealing. Like, the most colourful thing right now is your target reticle. You know, getting this far in the game and it still being black and white.
Well, I think this first level is black and white because it is a flashback. I mean, that is quite typical. I don't think that could stand as a criticism necessarily. You know, black and white. See, this is where that's your first Warframe, really. Look at that.
Yeah.
He's even got the Nyx helmet. So is he throwing a glaive at Tenno now, is he?
This is the guy that will infect you, so...
Yeah, that's it. This guy, I believe this is the big supreme baddie, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he's obviously got his own Warframe. Yeah, look at him.
Those are pretty nifty abilities.
Yeah, I don't know.
Run away!
I don't know if he's been mutated by his nanotech or if that's a suit he's wearing.
Yeah.
But in that, it's setting it up for that idea is, you know, ultimately in Warframe it gives them massive scope to be able to do whatever they want in creating these superhero-like characters,
kind of landscape to play with.
Exactly, yeah, and they've done really well at least establishing the sci-fantasy premises, which then allow them to be able to make a game with all the mechanics they could ever want.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's wearing a suit. Look, he's a normal guy wearing a suit. So this is the Russian guy. Now in the unofficial...
There we go. There's the infection.
Oh, no, it's not. So that must be another... So is that just like a monster that he's created?
I honestly couldn't tell you beyond this opening intro story what happens.
There we go. The colour's coming in now.
Yeah.
It's very Japanesey. You know, like you can really see. I mean, this could be Resident Evil if I didn't know it was Dark Sector.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I checked the Metacritic scores for the game, and it received, like I said, it's more than average. Although some scores, believe anything less than an 8 is not worth buying.
Yeah.
The game received 72s and 66s across the Xbox, PlayStation 3, and PC.
Yeah, that's probably about right. I think just to give it it's an all right game.
Yeah,
would be fair. Like as I'm playing it at the moment, if it was to say. I mean, I obviously haven't played anything like enough to give it a full rating, but as it stands at the moment, you say, it looks like about a 7 or an 8. Between 7 and 8 would be a fair game. But it just depends how this story develops of Hayden Tenno. It's obviously a very low polygon account, but we're talking 360 PlayStation 3 graphics here, aren't we?
2008, yeah. So that's 11 years old now.
If you're going to step back in the graphical quality, you've got to have something really special about a game to make you want to go back.
Either the gameplay or the story.
That's it, yeah. So I don't know if the story's going to hold up. For me, there is if you're a fan of Warframe, I'd say that all of this has a really kind of nostalgic interest.
Definitely, that's what I would say is, if you are a fan of Warframe, you're going to see some of the references or names or icons or symbols or what have you.
It's so interesting how much of this game is clearly in the birth of Warframe, carried over into the birth of Warframe.
Yeah.
So the little symbol you've got in the Dark Sector logo, that's also the symbol on the Lotus, which is the queen that you service in Warframe, and that's her Lotus symbol. And in that dialogue there, the bad guy was talking about, have you heard of the Lotus? So all of these, the Glaive is the same, this sort of mutated half machine, half organic material thing. That's all what Warframe is based on. So there's masses in here which ties over, and you could it does kind of link the universes, but it's more of like an interest piece of DE's development, and how you can see that the ideas that eventually made Warframe went through the creative process, I suppose.
Definitely.
That's probably where you'd find the most interest in this game. But as it currently stands, it started out as a sort of a generic cover shooter with nothing special. But the Darkness, I never played all the way through the Darkness either, because that was very similar, where you just mutating and getting more and more powers. Yeah. And you are like a supremely powerful being.
I liked the character. I liked the dialogue. I liked the character of the Darkness.
Yeah.
And the voice work. It made it interesting and humorous.
Yeah.
Whereas in this, it just felt dull, generic, lifeless, and left me uninterested, even though he has this super ability where he's able to mutate people like that.
Yeah.
I still felt more satisfaction using the chainsaw bayonet in Gears of War. There's the gameplay loop in this game just wasn't as satisfying.
Yeah.
And like I said, even though the colours
throw this glaive around much?
Yes, yeah. Sometimes you throw the glaive around, you're trying to go for 3 decaps in one throw of it. But it's
how do I throw this glaive then? So I've got my glaive.
I don't know if you can throw it. Yeah, because you can also throw it later on to pick up weapons and pick up loot that's in unreachable locations.
Cool.
So it's kind of like your grappling hook as well.
So I'm using shoulder button to throw my glaive, and I use, I guess, trigger to.
So there is the combination gameplay of shooting with your gun in one hand and throwing the glaive with your other.
Yeah.
And the glaive, like a boomerang, will always come back to you.
I have to say that is a mechanic in Warframe that they retain. So if you do get out the glaive, you can use the glaive with your secondary weapon.
Right, yeah.
Which is often a pistol if that's what you've got. So that gives you an advantage for using the glaive. Oh dear.
Yeah.
Hit him. There we go, bounce it off the wall.
I think when he goes red like that, then obviously
you can do some sort of finish.
You cut his arm off.
Right?
Yeah, you cut his arm off, so he's bleeding out and screaming.
So this game's gimmick is all about the gore, by the looks of it, isn't it? It's about chopping people up.
There is small spoilers. Is that there are some giant Cthulhu-like Lovecraftian monsters
Yeah.
that do appear in the game that do spice it up a little bit, but they're just giant bullet sponges. Some of their animations are predictable, but fine. Yeah. See, that should be that. I mean, that is satisfying. I admit.
Yeah, I think that this one they've just they've not overcomplicated it. It's just glorious deaths. I think by the looks of it is what they've gone for. And I do have to. I suppose I admit I do quite enjoy games.
Yeah.
With glorious deaths in.
Yeah.
That's why I quite like Killing Floor as well, because you have that just slow mo.
Yeah.
Ultra gore fest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is quite enjoyable for me. I do quite like that. If the animations pull it off, then that can keep me coming back to a game.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, would I recommend buying this game?
Would you continue playing the game on a budget? I mean, you could probably buy the game very cheaply now as well.
Yeah, I was looking on Steam just before we made the recording to see whether or not it was still, how much it was still going for. It's like $6.99.
Okay.
And I bet you'd probably be able to pick it up for like a couple of quid on sale sometime.
Yeah.
I guess this
I'd
is the
only
thing.
recommend this to Warframe fans as kind of like a small bonus, as something to go back and have a look at if you're a fan of DE.
I think if you're a fan of the cover shooter, you're done with Gears. This might be worth a go for a blap through. I don't think you're gonna get. I don't know how long this game is. Do you know how many hours the campaign is?
No, I don't.
It's probably gonna be sort of 10 to 20 hours, not much more than that, is it?
I think it. Yeah, I mean, I honestly couldn't say, but I get a feeling a game like this will probably be about 8 hours at most.
Yeah. Well, if it's an 8-hour campaign, and it's a couple of quid,
I can't see any reason to replay the game once it's done, unless the story was that exciting, which, like I said, for me was the big turn-off. It just wasn't that engaging or appealing.
I think that was one of the big problems with these kinds of games in general for developers, was the idea that once you played through these, there's not really any reason to play them again, which is why they then keep trying to add in the horde modes and things like that to try and get people engaged and sticking with playing the game.
Yeah.
But obviously all of that was about vectoring microtransactions, which Warframe does. But it's free to play.
Right, yeah.
So it's not like Gears of War 4 where they then just deliberately... Oh, hello? When lock-on completes, target pick up with left trigger. So
you can now steal their weapons, take the weapons out of their hands.
That's a bit different.
Yeah. Like I said, there are quite a few different unique upgrades and abilities for the Glaive, and obviously the different firearms that you get, but they're all mostly, generic stuff that you've seen in other video games as well. And then you see some crazy physics like
I don't know how many other weapons you get. I guess it really focuses on this Glaive getting more and more powerful, does it?
Yes, yeah.
Which, is, if you've only got one weapon and one gimmick to carry you, it's only going to carry you for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's one of the reason why I play Warframe so much is because there is so many of options. Yeah. And so you have fun with one particular mechanic for a while until you're bored of it. Then the next one's there for you to try. There's meant to be able to put. Look, there's something up there. Oh, maybe you've got to use.
You can use your steel. Yeah. There you go.
So you got to use that to steal
explosives.
the C4. Now I can put it on here.
That's the puzzles. Well, at the start. So yeah, I'm sorry I didn't give Dark Sector the love maybe it should have got when it came out. I found it dull. Like I said, it was overshadowed by a lot of games that came out that year, and I honestly couldn't recommend anybody to go back and play it unless you are a Warframe fan. Yeah,
if you really like DE's work, then it's worth looking at this as a piece of history for that developer. I don't. It's an okay game of its time. That's what my judgment of it is at the moment. It's got some fun little gimmicks, and if you're a massive fan of this genre, then you may well find stuff to really enjoy about Dark Sector. It's got, I mean, generally the reviews on Steam are pretty positive. The controls are clunky, I would say that. But yeah, that was of this time. All the controls for games got a bit clunky during this period, and it was nice to go back to the ultra smooth, like, well, what Warframe is now, and like, not just Warframe. What's the Titanfall?
Titanfall, right?
Titanfall,
fluid, wall running, Mirror's Edge style.
Yeah,
moving fast.
I much more enjoy, especially if you're going to go sci-fi.
Doom as well.
Yeah,
the relaunch of Doom.
Exactly. If you're going to go sci-fi, then flipping out, move like a sci-fi.
I don't know, but then I love Dead Space. And Dead Space is slow and cumbersome and Resident Evil style.
Yeah, but in Dead Space, that's not really an action shooter. That's not a sci-fi action shooter.
It became an action sci-fi shooter in the end.
Well, it's meant to be horror. That's much more like Resident Evil style, where your limitation of movement is meant to add that sense of peril.
Yeah.
Whereas on this, it's not really. That's not this mechanic. The mechanic for this is be mega powerful and murk up loads of people.
Yeah. And go and kill lots of big monsters.
Yeah. Same with Gears, really. You're just a big hulking badass. So that kind of slower movement doesn't match up that well with it, I don't think.
Right.
But I mean, Gears is obviously, if you're going straight up shooter, then getting in cover makes a bit more sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it sort of does and it sort of doesn't. I mean, really, this wooden box wouldn't stop anything. You know what I mean? So
nope.
It's also kind of daft.
Yeah.
But I do. If you're going away from the sci-fi and you're going into, and you're trying to be like modern style, semi-realistic, then you don't really have much options to make it not impossibly difficult, because you've got to have a character that is tough enough to make it fun, and so it's really hard to make a mechanic like that where it just is authentic and viable
and believable.
Otherwise it just starts to get a bit silly.
Going into corny town.
Yeah, that's it. Which, I mean, sort of Resident Evil kind of
did as well. Anyway,
it goes into super corny town. So unless you're going into like, Ninja Gaiden is like a really good example of where, they've just gone all out fantasy, even though it's like a semi sort of like modern day setting. It's just they've gone completely alternative universe, really, haven't they? So, and I guess that's what they've done here. But then you might as well have nicer, faster movement and just be generally tougher and do things in a much more like actiony kind of way than pop out, shoot, pop back in again.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a bit of a weird mix match. I think some of that mismatch is just the design, where game design was at the time.
Yeah.
I definitely think Warframe is the better game for sure.
Cool. Well, with that being said, I just want to say thank you, Geoff, and thank you everyone for watching. We'll be back next Friday looking at another video game. Of course, new film reviews on Thursdays, podcast on the first Saturday of each month. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Podbean, and on Patreon. Thanks for watching, everyone, and don't get killed, Geoff.
No! It's going to happen, you know it.
This is, of course, just an example of the sort of giant monsters that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting this.
When I said Lovecraftian giant monsters, I wasn't kidding.
Big mutant monster.
But like I said, these things are giant bullet sponges. You're just going to keep hitting it and hitting it and hitting it and hitting it and hitting it until eventually it will
die. But where's my pistol?
I don't know.
I don't understand. That's one thing. I've got a pistol. Oh, no.
Have you changed the ammo type, did you? Or do you? I don't know.
No, I've got the
Glaive
pistol in my hand, but when I now aim, it's just the Glaive.
We're keeping all this content in, Geoff, just to be whether you kill it or die, that's when we'll fade out. But whether we're celebrating your victory or celebrating your glorious death.
Commiserating my death.
I'll celebrate it, don't worry. I think you've done it. I think you chased him off. So,
Hey.
we'll celebrate that you get to live to fight another day. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you next time.
Take it easy.